Close your eyes. You do not have to do anything tonight but listen and breathe and let the weight of the whole day begin to slide off your shoulders and down into the bed beneath you. Because while you sleep, something inside you keeps working. There is a part of your mind that never rests, never sleeps, never once takes the night off. It is working right now as you settle in. And tonight, for the next hour, you and I are going to do something very few people ever learn to do. We are going to give that part of you new instructions. Most people never reach it. They spend their days trying to force their lives to change from the outside in. More effort, more willpower, more pushing against a door that only opens the other way. And when the pushing wears them out, they swing to the far extreme. They simply wish. They cross their fingers. They whisper to the universe. They wait for something to fall out of the sky onto a mind they have never once tended. Both of them miss the same quiet law, and it is a law. It is not a mood. It is not luck. It is not a personality you were either born with or born without. The men and women who actually rebuilt their lives all pointed to the very same place. Napoleon Hill, who spent 20 years among the wealthiest people of his age. Bob Proctor, who climbed out of debt and obscurity. Florence Scovel Shinn, who watched it work again and again in a quiet parlor in New York. And Neville Goddard, who stood on a stage and taught it for nearly 40 years. 4 teachers, 4 different vocabularies, one single law underneath them all. And the strange part, the part almost nobody believes until they try it, is where that law does its deepest work. Not in the daylight, when you are straining and trying, in the last soft minutes before you fall asleep. So tonight you are not going to try. Trying is the old way, and trying keeps you awake. Tonight you are going to drift. And as you drift, slowly, gently, with no effort at all, we are going to plant a new image of who you are and what your life is becoming. Let it begin. Law 1. The mind that works while you sleep. There was a young man in Canada, years ago, who by every visible measure should never have amounted to anything. He had almost no formal schooling. He had quit not long after the 8th grade. He worked a job he did not love. He carried around $6,000 of debt at a time when that was a small fortune, and he earned only a few $1,000s a year against it. He was, on paper, a man going nowhere slowly. One day, someone handed him a worn copy of a book. A man named Ray Stanford pressed it into his hands and told him, in effect, that everything he wanted was already inside him if he would only change what he believed. The young man read it, and then he read it again, and something in him began, very quietly, to turn. Within a single year, his income crossed $100,000, not by working 100 times harder, by changing, first, the picture he carried on the inside. His name was Bob Proctor, and he would go on to teach this one idea to millions of people for the next 60 years of his life. Now here is what you must understand lying there in the dark, before any of the rest of this will work. You do not have one mind, you have 2. You have the conscious mind, the part that is listening to me right now, the part that reasons and chooses and worries and plans, and beneath it, far larger and far older, you have the subconscious mind, the part that never sleeps, the part that runs the show. Proctor gave it a name he borrowed and made famous. He called it the paradigm. A paradigm, he said, is a multitude of habits lodged in your subconscious mind. It is not the program you wrote on purpose. It is the program that was installed in you, layer by layer, mostly before you were 10 years old, by the people you grew up around, the words they spoke over you, the fears they handed you about money, about work, about your own worth, about what kind of person you are and what you are allowed to have. And that program runs your life with a faithfulness that would frighten you if you could see it. It runs your habits. It runs what you reach for when you are tired. It runs how much money you let yourself keep. It runs the ceiling you keep bumping your head against and calling reality. Hill said it plainly. The thought, repeated and felt, becomes the physical equivalent in your life. Whatever has been impressed on the subconscious quietly builds. So understand the law of this first hour. You will not change your life by rearranging the furniture of the outside. You will change it the way all 4 of these teachers said you would. By changing the image underneath. By reaching gently the mind that works the night shift and handing it a different blueprint to build from. That is why we are doing this now, at the edge of sleep, and not at noon when you are armored up and arguing with yourself. Because the program that has been running you was installed when you were too young to resist it, and it can be rewritten the same way, softly, repeatedly, in a state where the guard at the door has finally gone home. You can already see the old program, if you know where to look for it. Proctor used to say it reveals itself in 4 places, 4 rivers that run out of you every single day: your time, your money, your attention, and your words. Watch where each one flows when no one is forcing you to choose, and you are watching the paradigm at work. The money that drifts again and again toward the same small comforts, the attention that returns, like a tongue to a sore tooth, to the same old worry. The hours that quietly vanish into the same numb corners, the words that keep describing the very life you say you do not want. None of it is really a willpower problem. It is an image problem. The picture underneath is simply spending you the way it has always spent you. And here is the mercy hidden in that, the thing that should let your shoulders drop another inch into the bed. If the image is the cause, then you are not the problem. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are not uniquely, hopelessly incapable, however many times the old voice has told you so. You have simply been running a program someone else wrote long ago, when you were too small to refuse it, and you mistook it for your nature. It was never your nature. It was only your conditioning. And conditioning, unlike nature, can be undone. Hill called the subconscious the connecting link. The bridge, he said, between the small finite mind of a person and the vast intelligence that actually does the building of a life. You do not have to know how the building gets done. You only have to hand over the order. The subconscious draws on a power far greater than yourself to fill it. The same power that grows the seed in the ground and turns the whole earth toward morning. Your one task, your entire task, is to be careful about what you hand it. And the handing happens here, in the quiet, in the soft minutes before sleep, when the deep mind has finally stopped arguing and started to listen. Remember the young man in Canada. He did not become a different soul. He changed the image he carried on the inside, and the same man, with the same hands and the same 8th grade schooling, built a fortune within a few short years, and then spent the rest of his life showing other people the door he had found. The speed of it astonished even him. That is what becomes possible the day you stop sanding the surface of your life and finally reach the thing underneath it. Tonight, do not try to fix the visible. Do not lie there making lists. Just begin to notice that there is a builder in you, working in the dark, and that for the first time, you are about to decide what it builds. Law 2. Sleep is the open door. Of the 4 teachers, the one who understood this hour best was Neville Goddard. He stood in lecture halls in the 1940s and 50s and told ordinary, tired, struggling people something that sounded almost too simple to be true. He said the door was open every single night, and they had been walking past it their whole lives. Listen to his own words, written in 1944. Sleep, he said, the life that occupies 1/3 of our stay on earth, is the natural door into the subconscious. The natural door. Not a trick, not a technique you have to earn. A door that opens by itself every night, whether you use it or not. And then he said, the thing that changes everything. It is in sleep and in prayer, a state akin to sleep, that man enters the subconscious to make his impressions and receive his instructions. That drowsy, half-lit state, right at the edge of sleep, when you are no longer fully awake but not yet gone, that is the moment the door stands widest open. Think about why this must be so. All day long, your conscious mind stands guard. You think of yourself as broke, and some watchman in you nods along. Yes, that is true, the bank account agrees. You try to tell yourself you are wealthy, you are capable, you are becoming someone new, and that same watchman folds his arms and says, who do you think you are fooling? That is the guard. That is the critical mind. And during the day, he never leaves his post. But as you drift toward sleep, the guard grows tired. His eyes get heavy. His grip on the door loosens. And whatever you are gently, persistently holding in your mind in those last minutes slips right past him and down into the subconscious, where it is taken not as a wish, but as a fact, and where it begins, quietly, to be built. This is why the last few minutes of your day are worth more than all the rest of it combined. Not the hour you spend pushing, not the hour you spend worrying. These few soft minutes, here, now. Most people throw them away. They fall asleep replaying the argument, the unpaid bill, the thing they should have said, the fear of tomorrow. And they wonder why the same life keeps reassembling itself around them, Morning after morning, they are using the open door. Every night. They have just been carrying the wrong thing through it. So here is what these minutes are for. As your body grows heavy and your breathing slows, you do not strain and you do not chase. You simply choose, on purpose, the last thing your mind is allowed to rest upon. You choose the feeling you will carry through that door. You decide, gently, what the builder will be handed tonight. Goddard told his audiences to do this every single night, without exception, until the new state had become their natural state. He said at first it would be hard. The mind would wander. The appearances of your present life would argue with you, but after a few days the feeling would come more easily. After a month, it would be natural. And after a while you would scarcely remember being the person who lived without it. Goddard had a particular name for this borderland, and it is worth holding on to as you feel it coming over you now. He called it the state akin to sleep. It is in sleep, he wrote, and in prayer, a state akin to sleep, that man enters the subconscious to make his impressions and receive his instructions. Notice that he set prayer and sleep side by side as two names for the same doorway, because real prayer, the kind that actually changes a life, was never begging and never bargaining. Prayer, Goddard taught, is the art of assuming. It is the act of dwelling in the feeling of the answered wish, until that feeling is the thing you carry down into the deep. And you do not have to manufacture this state by any effort. It arrives on its own, every night, as a gift you have been refusing to open. That heavy, warm, drifting feeling stealing over you right now, where the thoughts grow soft at the edges and the day loosens its grip and the bed seems to hold you a little more kindly, that is the state. That is the door swinging quietly open. You have passed through it thousands of times in your life without once using it on purpose. So think for a moment about what most people carry through it instead. They lie down, and the mind, left to its own old habits, reaches for the unfinished argument, the bill on the counter, the worry about Monday, the long catalogue of everything that went wrong and everyone who let them down. And all of it, charged with worry and replayed until they slip under, goes straight down through the open door and is handed to the builder as the work order for tomorrow. Then they wake, and the same grey life has faithfully reassembled itself around them, and they call it fate, or bad luck, or just the way things are. It was never any of those things. It was the open door, used carelessly, night after night after night. You are going to use it differently, beginning tonight. And the relief of it is that you do not need an hour, or a clever technique, or any particular gift. You need only these last few minutes, the ones you are already inside of. As the heaviness comes, you simply refuse to hand the builder your fear. You set the day down, gently, the way you would set down a heavy bag at the end of a long walk, and you reach instead for one good feeling, one good scene, and you let that, and only that, be the last thing in your mind as you slip beneath. That is the whole of the art. Not effort, only the quiet choosing of the final thought you carry through the door. So tonight, do not waste the door. You are standing in front of it right now. In a little while you will walk through. The only question, the only one that has ever mattered, is what you will be holding when you do. Law 3. The ground takes whatever you plant. There is a reason all 4 of these teachers reached for the same image, again and again, across 100 years. The image of a seed and the soil it falls into. The subconscious mind is the soil, and soil does not argue. Soil does not judge the seed. It does not lean up out of the ground and say, "Are you sure about this one? Are you certain you want a weed here instead of wheat?" The ground simply takes whatever is planted in it, and it grows it, with the same patient, tireless faithfulness, no matter what it is. This is the part most people never grasp, and it is the part that has been quietly working against them their whole lives. Your subconscious cannot take a joke. It cannot tell the difference between what is true and what is merely felt strongly and repeated often. It does not check your statements against your bank balance. Whatever you press into it, with feeling, often enough, it accepts as an instruction and sets about making real. Which means it has been listening to you all along. Every time you said, "Money slips through my fingers." Every time you said, "I always mess this up. Things never work out for me. I am just not the kind of person who gets ahead." You thought you were describing your life. You were not describing it. You were ordering it. You were dropping seeds into ground that does not argue, and then standing back, year after year, amazed at the harvest of the very thing you kept planting. Goddard put it as sharply as anyone ever has. The picture in your mind without feeling, he said, is just a postcard. pretty, flat, powerless. But the picture charged with feeling is a seed. A seed dropped into the ground of the subconscious. And what you take in as a feeling, he taught, you bring out as a condition. Take in, night after night, the feeling of lack, and lack is the condition that grows. Take in, night after night, the feeling of the answered wish, and over time, that is the condition that must appear. So tonight a great deal turns on one small decision. You are going to be planting something in this soil whether you mean to or not. You always are. The only choice you have ever had is what. And here's the relief in it, the part that should let your shoulders drop another inch into the bed. You do not have to fight the old weeds out one by one. You do not have to argue with every fear you ever planted. The ground is changed not by force, Proctor taught, but by substitution. You simply begin, gently and persistently, to plant a new seed, a truer one. And as the new seed takes root and grows strong, the old growth, deprived of your attention, of your feeling, of your repetition, begins to wither on its own. Watch two people handed the very same day, and you will see this law working in plain sight. One of them meets a setback and plants it deep. They say it out loud, "Of course this happened to me, this always happens to me," and they carry it to bed and replay it half the night, watering it with feeling, until the belief that life is against them has grown another inch taller and stronger. The other meets the very same setback and refuses to plant it. They treat it as weather, passing through, nothing to be kept, and that night they return their mind, gently, to the harvest they actually intend. Same soil, same day. Two different seeds chosen, and a year later 2 different lives, each one grown faithfully, exactly, from what was planted in the dark. Shinn watched this happen for decades, and it grieved her, because she could see what the people in front of her could not see in themselves. She said, "Most of us use our word, our wand, to curse the very things we long for. We want money, and all day we speak of how it always runs out. We want love, and we speak of how no one ever stays. We want peace, and we rehearse every reason we will never have it. We are standing over the willing ground, hour after hour, commanding it to grow the exact opposite of our desire. And the ground, obedient and tireless, simply obeys. The tragedy was never that the law failed these people. The tragedy is that it worked perfectly, the whole time, on the wrong instructions. And the ground asks one more thing of you, the one thing most people cannot give. It asks for patience. A seed does its first and most important work underground, in the dark, where you cannot see it, where for a long while nothing at all appears to be happening. That hidden stretch, after you have planted but before any green has broken the surface, is precisely where most people lose their nerve and dig the whole thing up to check on it, and so kill it, again and again, and conclude that nothing ever grows for them. But the faithful ground is already at work in the dark, exactly as it is at work in you right now. Your part is not to dig. Your part is only to keep planting the same true seed, and to trust the soil, and to wait. You are the gardener. You have always been the gardener. You just did not know that the careless thoughts you let fall all day were being planted as carefully as any deliberate prayer. Tonight, you plant on purpose. Choose one seed, one simple, true sentence about the person you are becoming, and drop it, softly, into the dark and willing ground. Law 4. Feeling is the secret. If there is a single thread that ties all 4 of these teachers together, a single phrase that holds the whole law in 3 words, it is the title Goddard gave to one of his books. Feeling is the secret. Not thinking, not wishing, not repeating words like a tired prayer you have stopped believing. Feeling. The emotion you generate is the secret, because emotion is the only language the subconscious actually speaks. You can recite an affirmation 1,000 times with a flat, dead heart, and nothing will move, because you have handed the builder a postcard. But feel the thing as real, even for a moment, and you have handed him a living seed. Hill knew this. He called it autosuggestion charged with emotion, and he warned that words read without feeling would never reach the subconscious at all. Proctor knew it. He said you must decide, deliberately, what you will emotionalize, instead of letting the day decide it for you. Shinn knew it. She taught the spoken word felt as already accomplished, not merely said. And Goddard reduced it to its bare bones. Feeling is the secret. There was a man, deep in debt, who came to Goddard nearly broken by it. He spent every night lying awake running over the unpaid accounts, the creditors, the rent he could not cover. And Goddard told him to stop, not to lie there solving it, not to argue with the figures. Instead, every night, before sleep, to say to himself, in feeling, only 3 words. Isn't it wonderful? That was all. Do not specify, do not name the how, do not bargain. Just feel, as a man feels who has just received some enormous unexpected good and is sitting in the warm afterglow of it. Isn't it wonderful? And fall asleep inside that feeling. Do you see the brilliance of it? The man did not have to lie and tell himself a specific number had arrived, which his anxious mind would have rejected on the spot. He only had to summon the feeling of good fortune, of relief, of gratitude already arrived, and let the subconscious sort out the form. He fed the ground, the harvest, and trusted it to grow the crop. Goddard's instruction for these minutes could not be simpler. Feel, he wrote, as you would were you in possession of your wish, and quietly relax into unconsciousness. Read that again, slowly, because it is the whole practice. Feel as you would if it were already done, and then let yourself slide gently into sleep, still feeling it. There is a distinction here that decides everything, and almost everyone walks right past it. There is a vast distance between thinking about a thing and feeling it. You can lie here and think about being free, being secure, being proud of the life you are living, and you can think about it all night long, and the thinking will change nothing, because thinking about a thing quietly confesses that you do not yet have it. To think about money is to rehearse its absence, but to feel it, to drop down into the actual emotion of already having it, is to occupy it, and what you occupy you slowly begin to attract. Goddard gave a clean instruction for crossing that distance, and it is the whole practice in a single line. Disregard appearances, he said, and feel that things are as you wish them to be. Disregard them. The bank balance, the silent room, the calendar, the whole tall stack of evidence for the life you are leaving behind. For these few minutes, and they are yours, you are allowed to set every bit of it down and feel, instead, exactly as you would feel if the wish were already, completely, fulfilled. Not the way it looks, the way it would feel. And here is the small trick that makes the feeling easy to find, even on a night when you are tired and the heart is flat. Do not try to summon the whole dream at once. Find instead one small scene that would only be true if your wish were already granted. Just one quiet implied moment. The handshake, the notice that the money has arrived. The friend who says, "I always knew you would." The long, slow breath you finally let out when the thing you feared most is at last behind you. Find that single scene and step inside it and feel it from within as a memory rather than a hope. Proctor said it as plainly as it can be said. Stop letting the day decide what you feel and decide, deliberately, what you will emotionalize. Take the scene of the answered wish and feel it unrising and feel it through the day and feel it most of all here, at the edge of sleep, until the warm feeling of the wish fulfilled is the only state your subconscious is being asked, any longer, to receive. So tonight, do not reach for the perfect words, reach for the feeling. Whatever it is you most want, the security, the freedom, the work you are proud of, the person you are becoming, do not describe it, feel it. Feel what it would feel like in your chest, in your shoulders, in the loosening of your jaw, if it were already, quietly, yours. Feel the relief of it. Feel the calm certainty of a thing already settled. You do not have to hold it perfectly. You do not have to hold it for long. You only have to soak these last few minutes in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and carry that feeling, like something warm cupped in your hands, through the open door of sleep. The ground will take it from there. Law 5. The assumption that hardens into fact. Now we come to the heart of Goddard's whole teaching, the law he spent 40 years proving to anyone who would listen. He called it the law of assumption, and it is this: you do not get what you want. You do not even get what you work for. You get what you dare to assume is already true, and persist in assuming, until the assumption hardens into the fact of your life. Goddard taught, borrowing a line he loved from the British statesman Anthony Eden, that an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Sit with that. An assumption that is not yet true, that the whole visible world contradicts, if you persist in it, if you keep returning to it night after night and living inside it, will harden the way water hardens into ice, into a literal fact of your experience. Let me tell you about a young man who proved this without ever reading a single one of these 4. In 1990, an unknown comedian sat alone in his car, looking out over Los Angeles, broke and full of doubt, and he did something strange. He wrote himself a check. $10 million, he wrote, for acting services rendered. He dated it several years into the future, Thanksgiving of 1995, and he folded it into his wallet, where it slowly fell apart from being carried so long. And every night, as he tells it, he would picture it. He would assume the feeling of already being a man directors wanted, a man whose work was worth a fortune, not hoping, assuming, living in the end. His name was Jim Carrey, and within a few years he was one of the most sought-after actors alive, commanding millions upon millions of film. He had assumed the role into being before the world ever offered it to him. But here the part Carrey himself was careful to add, because it is the part the lazy version of this teaching always leaves out. You can't just visualize, he said, and then go and eat a sandwich. The assumption is the seed. It does its work in the dark, but the man who assumes also moves. We will come back to that before the night is through. Goddard told a story closer to his own bones. A soldier, stationed in an army camp in Louisiana in the spring of 1943, desperate to be home. He had applied for his discharge and been refused, so instead of begging, he changed where he slept. Night after night, in his imagination, he assumed he was already discharged, already home, lying not in the barracks, but in his own bed, with the familiar walls of his own room around him. He did this for 8 nights. On the 9th day, the orders came through to fill out a new application, and this time it was approved, and he went home. He had slept his way into the end, and the world rearranged itself to deliver it. This is what living in the end means. You do not pray toward the thing as though it were far off and uncertain. You go to the end. You assume the wish fulfilled, and you sleep there. Goddard said it must be felt now. You must be, in his words, in the consciousness of being or having that which you want to be or to have before you drop off to sleep. Before, not after the proof arrives. Before, while the whole world still says no. Living in the end is the simplest idea in the world, and the hardest thing for an anxious mind to actually do, because the anxious mind insists on living in the middle. It wants to stand in the present lack and stare down the whole long, frightening road of how, every step of it, before it will allow itself a single moment of peace. But the how was never your department. The how belongs to the subconscious, to the connecting link, to the same quiet power that delivered that soldier his orders without his planning a single one of them. Your department is the end. You go to the end, you take up residence there, and you let the means arrange themselves on the road behind you. And the assumption has to be persisted in. This is the part the careless version always drops. 1 night of living in the end is a lovely experiment. 40 nights of living in the end is a different life. You return to the same end again and again until the strangeness has worn smooth off it, until it stops feeling like a wish you are straining toward and starts feeling like a fact you are simply remembering. Goddard promised his listeners that at first the feeling would be hard to enter, the appearances would argue, the mind would slip away, but after a few nights, he said, it comes more easily. After a month, it is natural, and after a while, the old you, the one who did not have this thing, will feel like a stranger you can scarcely call to mind. So you are not gambling tonight on a single dramatic act of faith. You are beginning a quiet, nightly residence in the finished life. Each night you move a little more of yourself in. Each night the end feels a little more like home, and the old lack a little more like a place you used to live. That is how an assumption hardens into a fact, not in a flash. By the patient, repeated taking up of residence, until one day the outer world, which is always the last to know, finally catches up and agrees. So tonight do not ask, assume. Choose the one thing, and instead of wishing for it from a distance, step into the scene where it is already done, where the worry is already over. Where you are already the person who has it. Lie down inside that scene as the soldier lay down in his own imagined bed. Disregard, just for these few minutes, the appearance of your present life, the balance, the room, the calendar, and feel that things are as you wish them to be. Persist in that, night after night, and watch the assumption begin, slowly, quietly, to harden into the fact. Law 6, your word is a wand. We have spoken of the silent things, the feeling, and the assumption that work without a sound. But there is another instrument, and this one you can hear. It is your own voice, the word you speak. A century ago, in New York City, there was a woman named Florence Scovel Shinn. She had trained as an artist, an illustrator of books, And then in the middle of her life, she turned to teaching a single idea, and she watched it work so many times in her own quiet practice that she wrote it down for the rest of us. Her idea was that your word is a wand. That speech is not decoration. That speech is creative. Owing to the vibratory power of words, she taught, whatever a man voices, he begins to attract. Whatever you say, again and again, with conviction, you are calling toward you. And most people, she observed with great sadness, spend their whole lives waving this wand in the wrong direction. They speak their fears out loud 100 times a day. I can't afford it. I'm exhausted. Nothing ever changes for me. I'm too far behind now. They are casting spells, every one of them, and then wondering why their lives keep obeying. Shinn taught her students to reverse the wand, to speak, deliberately, the word of the thing they desired, as though it were already on its way. She gave them decrees, short and certain, to say aloud, Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance. I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by right. She had them speak it not as a beggar speaks, pleading, but as one who already knows, who is simply announcing what is already settled. She wrote it into 2 small books that have never once gone out of print, The Game of Life and How to Play It, and another whose title says the whole teaching by itself, Your Word is Your Wand. And she rooted it in something very old and very simple. By thy words thou shalt be justified, she would remind her students, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned. The word is not idle. The word goes out, and the word gathers. She gave them decrees to carry, short and certain, to be spoken aloud the moment the fear rose up. For the one weighed down by lack, she would have them say, with quiet conviction, Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance, for I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by divine right. And then, having spoken it, to do one small thing as though it were already on its way, because the spoken word, she taught, must be backed by an act of faith before it will take root. She watched debts dissolve, and doors swing open with a speed that embarrassed common sense, not because the words were magic, because the words, spoken with conviction and felt as already true, were instructions dropped cleanly into a subconscious that does not argue. There is a particular power in saying it aloud that silent thought alone does not carry. The spoken word commits you. It moves through the body, it is heard by your own ears, it leaves a mark that is harder to take back. This is why a fear spoken out loud is doubled and grows. But a truth spoken out loud gently and certainly in the dark is a seed pressed firmly down into the soil with the flat of the hand. It is the silent assumption given a voice, and the voice gives it weight. And the most powerful sentences you will ever speak are not the loud ones. They are the ones you whisper to no one, in the dark, at the edge of sleep, when the only listener left awake is the part of you that builds. Shinn had her students speak release as well as request, because a held burden blocks the open way. When worry had its grip on them, she had them declare it cast off, the load handed over, themselves set free of it. And for the road ahead, for any task that frightened them, she gave them a line to speak over it. Infinite Spirit, go before me, and make clear, easy, and successful my way. Spoken with conviction, again and again, until the body unclenched and the fear loosened its hold. She was not teaching them to lie to themselves. She was teaching them to stop speaking the curse out of habit and start speaking the blessing, so that the wand, for once, was pointed in the direction they actually wished to travel. And she insisted on one thing the dreamers always forget. The decree had to be spoken as already answered, and then released, not clutched. To say the word and then lie awake anxiously watching for it to come true is to plant the seed and dig it up again by morning. So she taught them to speak the word with the calm certainty of a thing already done, and then to let it go completely, to turn over and sleep as one sleeps who has already received. The speaking impresses it. The letting go trusts it. And it is the trusting, every bit as much as the speaking, that finally sets the word free to work. And here the 4 teachers join hands again, because Hill taught the very same practice from the other side of the room. The final step of his entire method was to take the statement of what you intend to become and to read it aloud, twice a day. Once in the morning, the moment you wake, and once at night, just before you sleep, those 2 soft hours when the door stands open. And as you read it, he said, see and feel, and believe yourself already in possession of it. The word, spoken with feeling, at the edge of sleep, carried straight through the open door. So this is no small thing. the words you let leave your mouth. They are seeds you are planting out loud. They are instructions you are speaking over the ground that does not argue. If a teaching like this is the thing you have been missing all along, take one quiet second now, before you drift any further down, and subscribe, because this channel exists for exactly this, the real work of the 4 teachers, gathered and made simple enough to use tonight. And tonight, before you sleep, speak your word. It does not need to be long. One sentence, spoken softly into the dark, in the present tense, as a thing already true. I am becoming the person I was meant to be. Life is opening the way for me now. Speak it once, twice, gently, like a hand smoothing a sheet, and then let it go, and let it work, and let yourself sink. Law 7. Repetition wears the groove. Here is the question that decides everything, and it is the question almost nobody wants the honest answer to. If the law is this simple, why has it not worked for you already? You have wished before. You have said the affirmations before. You have had the good night, the inspired evening, the moment of real belief, and then your life carried on exactly as it was. Why? Because of one word: repetition. A single impression changes nothing. One brave night does not rewrite a program that took 20 years to install. You cannot plant a seed, dig it up the next morning to check on it, plant it again, dig it up again, and ever expect a tree. Picture water running across a field. The first time, it wanders, it spreads, it finds no particular way. But let that same water run along the same line, day after day after day, and it begins to wear a channel, a groove. And in time, the groove becomes so deep that the water could not leave it if it tried. It simply runs there now, automatically, because that is the path that has been cut. That is your paradigm. That is every habit, every belief, every automatic reaction you have. It is a groove worn by repetition, mostly repetition you never chose. Proctor said the paradigm is changed the same way it was made, not by one heroic act of willpower, which the old groove will defeat every time, by new repetition, by running the new water down the new line, gently, night after night, until a new and deeper channel is cut and the life begins to flow there on its own. Goddard gave his audiences a kind of timetable for this, so that they would not quit too soon, in the dark stretch before anything shows. At first, he warned, the feeling will be hard to enter, and the appearances of your present life will argue with you, and you will wonder whether anything is happening at all. But after 3 days, 4 days, a week, the feeling begins to come more easily. After a month, it is the natural state, the one you fall into without trying. And after about 6 months, he said, you will scarcely remember what it felt like to be the person who did not have this thing, because the inner state will so completely have become the new state that the old one feels foreign to you. That is the curve. That is what you are actually signing up for tonight. Not a miracle by morning, but a steady, certain deepening of the groove. And notice what makes the whole thing possible, the part that takes the strain out of it. You are not trying to rip the old channel out of the ground by force. That fight you would lose, every time, because the old groove is deep and worn smooth, and willpower is shallow and tires by the early afternoon. You are simply cutting a new channel beside it, and giving the new one all your quiet attention, while the old one, untended and unwatered, slowly dries to dust. Proctor called this changing the paradigm by substitution. You do not wrestle the darkness out of a room with your hands. You let in the light, and the darkness, having nowhere left to stand, leaves on its own. This is why patient discipline beats bright inspiration every time in this work. Inspiration is a single flood of water. It feels wonderful, it wanders everywhere, and it changes nothing, because it never once runs the same line twice. Discipline is the same modest stream, run down the same line, every night, without any drama at all, until the channel is so deep that the water could not leave it if it tried. The people for whom this becomes a genuinely new life are simply the ones who kept running the stream after the novelty wore off, on the ordinary nights, the tired nights, the nights they saw no proof at all and ran it anyway. Hill called this practice autosuggestion, and he called it the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. The deliberate, repeated, emotionalized feeding of the same chosen thought to the builder until the builder accepts it as the standing order. Not once, not when you feel like it, daily. As reliably as you eat, as reliably as you sleep. This is the difference between the people for whom this law is a pleasant idea and the people for whom it becomes the engine of a whole new life. The second group simply did it every day, and refused to stop before the channel was cut. I know how that sounds at the end of a long day, when you can barely keep your eyes open. So I made it as easy as it can possibly be made. I built a free daily auto-suggestion sheet, the exact morning and evening practice these 4 teachers would have put in your hands. You fill it in once, and then you simply read it with feeling when you wake and before you sleep, so that the repetition takes care of itself and the groove gets cut a little deeper every day. It comes with a few short lessons that show you how to do it so that it actually takes hold, and it costs you nothing. It is the first link in the description. Claim it and let tonight be day 1. Because the law is not, do this once and your life transforms. The law is, do this nightly, and one ordinary evening you will realize the new way of being has become automatic and the old groove has gone dry. Repetition is not the boring part of this. Repetition is the secret hidden inside the secret. Law 8. Revision, rewrite the day. But what about the days that go wrong? The days you lose your temper, or shrink back, or hear the old fearful voice and obey it. The days the visible world hands you a defeat, and the old paradigm leans in and whispers, see, nothing has changed. You are exactly who you always were. What do you do with a day like that, lying here at the end of it? Goddard had an answer, and it may be the most practical, most freeing thing he ever taught. He called it revision, and he called the tool by a gardener's name. He said you have available to you every single night a pair of pruning shears, and the pruning shears are revision. Here is how he did it himself. At the end of my day, he said, I review the day. I do not judge it. I simply review it. I look over the entire day, all the events, all the conversations, all the meetings, and then, as I see it clearly in my mind's eye, I rewrite it. He would take the scene that went wrong, the harsh word, the mischance, the moment of fear, and in his imagination he would replay it the way he wished it had gone, not once. Over and over, he said, in my imagination I relive that day, the revised day, until this imagined state begins to take on the tones of reality. Understand what this is, because it is not pretending, and it is not lying to yourself. The day is over. It exists now only as a memory, and a memory is an image held in the mind, and an image held in the mind, charged with feeling and repeated, is a seed like any other. The unrevised defeat, replayed all night with shame, is a seed. It plants more defeat, but the revised scene, the corrected one, lived in until it feels real, is the seed you plant instead. You are not editing the past for the past's sake. You are refusing to let the failure go down through the open door as your instruction to the builder. So when the day has gone against you, you do not lie there and rehearse it. That is the mistake almost everyone makes, running the bad scene on a loop until they fall asleep, soaked in it, and then handing that to the subconscious as the order for tomorrow. Instead, you take up the shears. You replay the moment as it should have been. You see yourself calm where you were rattled, bold where you were afraid, kind where you were sharp. You speak the word of the corrected self over the corrected scene. And you fall asleep, not as the man who failed today, but as the man who handled it beautifully. The slip is undone in the act of revision. The new image is informed that one bad afternoon does not get to be the blueprint. Take an ordinary example, the kind of evening anyone might have. Say you had a sharp exchange today with someone whose opinion of you matters, and you said the wrong thing, or you said nothing at all and hated yourself afterward for the silence. And now it sits in your chest like a swallowed stone. The untrained mind will lie here and play that scene on a loop until sleep finally takes it, and each replay carves the humiliation a little deeper, and each replay is an instruction handed to the builder to make more of exactly the same. That is, planting the failure, carefully, all night long. So you take up the shears instead. You go back to the doorway of that conversation, and you walk into it again. But this time, you let it unfold the way it should have. You see yourself steady where you were rattled, warm where you were sharp, unhurried where you panicked. You hear yourself say the very thing you wish you had said. You watch the other person soften in response, and you feel the quiet ease of a moment handled well. And you run that corrected scene, not once, but again and again, until it begins to feel like the true memory, until the stone in your chest simply dissolves, because in the only place that finally matters, the inner one, it did not happen the other way. There is a strange and enormous freedom in this that the old teachers understood and the modern world has almost entirely forgotten. You are not the prisoner of your day. You are not even the prisoner of your past. Every single night you are handed a clean pair of shears and a standing permission to tend the garden, to cut away what you do not wish to grow, and to plant in its place the corrected scene. And you can run the shears forward too, not only back. Before a day you are dreading, you can rehearse it in advance exactly as you wish it to go, and walk into the morning having already lived the good version of it once. The deep mind makes little distinction between a scene vividly imagined and a scene actually lived. So give it good scenes. Give it the day as it should have been, and the day as you fully intend it to be. Tonight, then, before you go any further, run the day back, gently. Find the one scene you would change, and change it. Live in the better version until it feels like the true one. And then carry that, the corrected day, the clean slate, down into sleep with you. You are allowed to rewrite it. You were always allowed. Law 9. The conversation you fall asleep in. There is a sentence of Goddard's that, once you truly hear it, you can never unhear. The world, he said, is yourself pushed out. Everything around you, the way people speak to you, the opportunities that find you or pass you by, the whole texture of your days, is the outpicturing of the conversations you have been holding on the inside. Because you are always in conversation, even now. Even as you lie here listening, some quiet, inner talk is running underneath, the way it always is. All day long you carry on these inner conversations, and most of them you never even notice. The silent argument with the person who wronged you, the worried rehearsal of the bill, the diagnosis, the deadline, the cutting little sentence you say to yourself when you catch your reflection or remember the thing you wish you had not done. These are not idle. Goddard taught that your inner conversations are creating your future as surely as any spoken word. The world is only catching up to the conversation you have already been having. So the question for these last minutes is not only what picture you hold, it is what conversation you are having as you cross into sleep, and you get to choose it. You can listen tonight to the same anxious inner voice you always do, or you can begin, deliberately, a different conversation, a conversation from the end. The conversation of the person whose wish has already been granted, talking to a friend about how it all worked out, hearing them say the words you have longed to hear, feeling the quiet pride and relief of a thing that is already done. A woman once wrote to Neville about exactly this. She and her family wanted a particular kind of home, larger, with room enough for everyone and everything they loved, the sort of home that seemed well beyond their reach. She did not strain after it. She did not calculate how a family with their income could ever manage it. She simply, for 4 nights, in her imagination, went to sleep in the kind of home she wished to own. She walked its rooms before sleep. She lay down in it. She had her inner conversations inside its walls, as though she already lived there. And not long after, the home appeared, and it was theirs, down to the details she had dwelt on. Even Hill, the most practical of the 4, did this. Every night before sleep he held what he called a council. In his imagination he gathered around a table the great men he most wished to learn from, and he spoke with them, one by one, asking each for the quality he wanted to absorb. He did it nightly, for months, feeling foolish at first. And in time, he wrote, those figures became so real in his mind that they began to counsel him, and qualities he had longed for began to grow in him. He understood that the company you keep in imagination, the conversation you hold as you fall asleep, slowly becomes the person you are. So, the real work, the patient work, begins with learning to overhear yourself. Through the day, catch the conversation that is already running underneath everything else. Notice the tone you take with yourself when no one else is in the room. Notice the little speech of complaint, the silent rehearsal of the worst case, the quiet verdict you keep passing on your own life and your own chances. You cannot change a conversation you have never once heard. But the very moment you hear it, you hold a choice you did not have before. You can let it keep running, or you can change the subject. And the way you change it is not by arguing with the bad conversation, because arguing only feeds it and keeps it at the center of the room. The way you change it is by gently starting a better one. Goddard taught a simple and beautiful technique for exactly this. Build a short scene, only a sentence or 2, that would be taking place only if your wish were already fulfilled, and then hold that conversation, in your imagination, over and over, until it carries the unmistakable ring of reality. Someone congratulating you, someone thanking you, your own voice saying, quietly, to a friend, it all worked out just the way I hoped it would. Repeat that inner conversation the way you would hum a tune you cannot get out of your head, until the mind stops questioning it and simply accepts it as a thing that is so. And you do this most of all here, in these final minutes, because the conversation you carry across the threshold of sleep is the one the subconscious takes up and works on all night long, in the dark, while you rest. Whatever you are quietly saying to yourself as you go under is the seed you are leaving in the ground to germinate until morning. Most people, without ever deciding to, hand it a worry, and the worry grows. You are going to hand it, instead, a calm and grateful conversation spoken from the far end of the story, where the wish is already kept, and let the deep mind work on that, hour after hour, while you sleep. And the deepest inner conversation of all is the one about who you are. Beneath every wish for a thing is the wish to become a certain kind of person, and the subconscious is always listening, underneath the words, for that name. So as you settle now, do not only rehearse the having, rehearse the being. Speak to yourself, silently, in the language of identity. I am steady. I am provided for. I am becoming the kind of person things work out for now. Not I will be, which keeps it forever one step out of reach, but I am, in the present tense, spoken as a settled fact. Goddard built his entire teaching on those two small words, I am, because whatever you sincerely and repeatedly attach to them, the deep mind quietly sets about proving true in the world. So choose what follows them with great care tonight, and fall asleep having gently told yourself the truest, the kindest, and the largest thing about who you now are. So tonight, choose your company and choose your conversation. As the bed grows heavy and the room grows far away, do not drift off arguing with the day. Drift off in the conversation of the answered wish. Hear the good news. Feel the embrace. Say the grateful words back. Fall asleep inside the scene, walking the rooms of the life you are building, and let the world, in its own time, push it out into the visible. Law 10. Wake as the one who already has it. And now we come to the morning. Because everything we have done tonight has a purpose beyond the night, and if you miss it, you will have only had a pleasant hour and changed nothing. The purpose is this. You impress the new image at the edge of sleep, and then you express it the moment you wake. You carry the person you became in the dark out into the daylight, and you let him or her live your day. This is where the law stops being something that happens to you in bed and becomes something you walk around inside of. Proctor named the wall you will hit when you try. He called it the terror barrier. The moment you begin to move toward the larger life, the old paradigm panics. It floods you with fear, with doubt, with 100 reasonable-sounding excuses for why you should retreat back into the small, familiar, safe life it has always run. Most people reach that wall, feel the fear, and turn around, and call the turning around common sense. The ones who change their lives feel exactly the same fear, and take the step anyway. The fear is not the sign that you are doing the wrong thing. It is the sign that you have reached the edge of the old self. And this is where I must be honest with you about the hardest part, because the four teachers always were. The first morning you wake and say you are this new person, a louder voice will call you a liar. The bank balance will not have moved, the room will look the same, and that is the exact moment most people quit, because they expected the proof to come before the belief. It comes the other way around. You hold the assumption without the proof. You keep planting, keep feeling, keep speaking, keep acting as the new person even while nothing visible agrees. And then, one ordinary day, a small unexpected good arrives from a direction you were not even watching. And now the new identity has its first piece of evidence, and you do not believe the law anymore. You know it. Remember the young comedian and his $10 million check. He held the assumption for years, yes, but he also said the thing the dreamers always cut out. You can't just visualize, he warned, and then go and eat a sandwich. You impress the image at night, and then you get up, and you move toward it with your hands and your feet. Imagination and action were never rivals. They are the two halves of the one law. The inner work makes you into the person who acts, and the action gives the inner work something to grow in. You plant by night, and you tend by day. And let me give you one more reason to trust this, a reason that has only grown stronger with the years. The world you live in has never been more distracted, more scattered, more fast asleep at the very door we have been standing in front of all night long. Almost no one sets a definite aim anymore. Almost no one tends the mind before sleep, or speaks a deliberate word over their own life, or revises a hard day, or assumes anything at all but the worst. The crowd scrolls itself into unconsciousness every night in a fog of other people's noise and wakes the next morning to the same fog. Which means the few who quietly get definite now, who do this small nightly work while everyone around them drifts, stand out faster and meet far less resistance than in any generation that came before them. Your seriousness about this one thing is rarer than it has ever been, and rarity, in a distracted world, is an enormous and quiet kind of leverage. So when the first proof comes, and it will come, do not wave it away as a coincidence, the way the frightened part of the mind will beg you to. Mark it, let it count. Let it be the first brick of hard evidence in the wall of the new identity, and then keep going, because proof compounds. One small confirmation makes the next assumption a little easier to hold. Holding it more easily makes the next proof a little more likely to arrive, and on it builds, brick by brick, night by night, until one day you are no longer working to believe the law at all. You simply live inside it, the way you live inside the certainty that the sun, having set tonight, will rise again tomorrow. This is the whole of it, the law these four spent their lives teaching, gathered into one quiet hour. Reach the mind that builds while you sleep. Use the open door. Plant the seed, the willing ground will grow. Charge it with feeling. Assume the end. Speak your word. Repeat it until the groove is cut. Revise the days that go wrong. Choose the conversation you fall asleep in, and wake, every morning, as the one who already has it, and go and live like him. Everything I have laid out tonight is one room of a much larger house. The complete law, all four teachers read, organized and laid out as a path you can actually walk, with a workbook that takes you through it step by step, lives inside the second life, our community and course. It once cost a serious one-time fee, and we have recently opened the doors so that a serious person can begin for free. I do not know how long it stays that way. But if you are the kind of person who listens to something like this all the way to the end, it was built for you. The link is in the description, for the day you are ready to walk the whole path and not just one room of it. But that is for the morning. For now, there is nothing left to do. You have done the work simply by listening. The new image is planted, the door is open. So let your body grow heavy, and your breathing slow, and the room drift far away. Let the last feeling you hold be the feeling of the wish already fulfilled, the quiet certainty of a person whose life is already turning toward the good. You are becoming someone new, and it is happening now, while you rest. To your second life, sleep well.